Welcome to the Cash Pay Podcast, the go-to podcast for med spas, IV therapy clinics, and wellness practices ready to grow, scale, and lead in the cash pay medical space. I'm your host, Hillary Small, founder of the MedSpa Society. I've branded, developed, and launched practices across the U.S., and I'm still in the trenches every day working alongside practice owners just like you. The show is honest, authentic, and built on real-world experience. Each week, you'll get expert strategies and unfiltered insights on marketing, operations, cutting-edge treatments, patient experience, and more, so you can run a profitable, efficient, and rewarding business. Let's dive into today's episode. Hi, I'm Hillary Small, and welcome to the Cash Pay Podcast. I am here today with Alex Lirtsman. He is the founder of Corral Data. Alex, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So to get started, I want to just give a brief intro as to what Corral Data is. First of all, I love the name Corral because at the end of the day, what you're doing is you are corralling, getting together all of the data and the information. So from a branding perspective and a naming perspective, I love the name to start off with. So Corral Data is a powerful AI-driven data and analytics platform designed to bring clarity and actionable insights to businesses. You can securely connect all your data sources, including EHR systems, CRMs, ad platforms, and more. The platform also lets you chat with your data using natural language via Ask Corral, build automated reports, and visualize key metrics in real time, all with enterprise-grade security and HIPAA compliant. So in short, Corral Data helps cash pay medical and med spa practices and many others unify fragmented data, uncover patient care and revenue boosting insights, and act on them fast with minimal technical overhead. So hopefully I did a good job summarizing what Corral does. And I want to let Alex talk a little bit about himself, introduce himself, his background, and what led him to start Corral.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you again for having me. And that description was as on point as it gets. So in my former life, I ran a fairly large digital agency, and we would go into large organizations, use data as their competitive advantage. And that's how we were able to scale our agency until we sold it to a large consulting firm. The opportunity we saw in the marketplace when even starting the agency was data is this sort of massive unlock. If you understand your customers better, if you understand your channels better, if you understand your drivers better, you could unlock those and you could focus your attention and you could focus your cash on the most relevant drivers for your business. So when I was starting Corral Data, my goal was, how do I make this absolutely effortless? So yes, you could hire data teams, data scientists, you could hire large agencies to be able to build a lot of this for you. What Corral Data does is just gives you an effortless way of connecting all of your EMR, EHR systems, app platforms, like you said, anything you could imagine, we probably have an integration for. Connect it, and you have visible, actionable intelligence right out of the box. And for us, it's how do we empower business owners, operators, marketers, like just making sure that they have all of that data at their fingertips. And it's not just something that is like, oh, data is the scary thing. Mm-hmm. We want to sort of take it from this like very scary place where it's just causing anxiety, or just like just a bunch of spreadsheets and numbers everywhere, to like, this is what you should actually do about your business to scale it. And I love working, especially in the healthcare practice space, because there just hasn't been anything like this before. And we have an opportunity to provide this in a fairly effortless way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, having worked in this space since, now it's been over 10 years, one of the biggest challenges is reporting. So I've had experience working with, and one particular experience that I'll bring up is, a multi-location practice that offered a multitude of services. They were on a large platform to run their sales and also their CRM. And then they had their EHR. And then we had all of our marketing. So the challenge was always, even with the amount of money they were paying every month for all of these tech platforms, they were all fragmented. And the biggest challenge were the simplest tasks of, what where does the patient fall off, in their journey, and even lifetime patient value just for specific services. And if this patient, had this service, had they had that service. And we were always spending time, even with like having all of these powerful platforms to work with that so much money was being spent on, all that information was fragmented. So at the end of the day, what this particular business ended up doing is build, and this was before, AI made things more simple. And I think they're still today, like they are building their own app to help unify these things. When I met Alex and Corral Data, I was like, oh my gosh, like this for this particular industry is such a phenomenal solution and so needed. And while you work with many different business segments and just happen to fall into this med spa and elective medicine space, like there's such a need for this, which leads me to my first question is, after working with many well-known enterprise level companies and all these different business segments, you stumbled into this space. How did it happen, and how has it evolved up to this point?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we started in the space. Our first customer in the space was Advanced Metastatic Partners, AMP, and they're a phenomenal customer, and we really love working with them. And what they're essentially doing is they're empowering both on the sort of portfolio level, but they're empowering operators to have all of the data that they need to make decisions. So when you were talking about sort of like those KPIs that somebody might look at, it's like, what is the LTV to CAC so I could actually spend money and drive the highest lifetime value against the channel that first generated that piece of business, right? Like that first got somebody to actually come in. And so when we sort of started working with AMP, it was just like, for us, this is fairly native. It's just like, of course, what we do is we aggregate, or like our name says, it's Corral. Corral all of your data. We aggregate it together. We make it accessible. We democratize it. And then what I've sort of realized is it's like, well, but this doesn't exist at all in this space, not even sort of like it doesn't exist in the space. And also it's very fragmented because of how many EMR and EHR systems out there. And then on the multi-location side, when somebody is rolling up a bunch of different practices, yes, maybe like someone's using Zenoti and someone's using Mevo and someone's using Boulevard. Now go provide aggregated reporting against all of those. And then similar thing might happen on the CRM side. And so as sort of at the end of the day, there hasn't been a level of standardization in the industry. That's obviously the biggest challenge that we started to solve. And then the second one was, how do we make this very effortless? Because I think one of the things that we also realized is people get into the space because they absolutely love the space. They're not getting into the space because of the business piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we just empower them to really focus on doing the right thing for their patient from like a practice level, and we could provide them with everything else to make smart decisions.
Yeah, no, that is so true. And part of what we're doing at the MedSpa Society is helping educate practices, big and small, on how to better handle that business side of things. So, like you were saying, with a tool like Corral Data, it takes the intimidation factor out of knowing what your numbers are, because to be able to compete in the competitive landscape, which is getting more and more competitive, you have to know what those numbers are. So whether or not you take away from this conversation today, like, okay, I need to talk to Corral Data. Ultimately, you need to understand what your numbers are and have a plan to reach those goals to make your business profitable. So moving on to the next question. You've worked with a wide range of businesses, obviously, on leveraging their data. What do you see as the biggest missed opportunity for businesses in this elective medical space when it comes to using their data?
I would say that the big challenge, and this is possibly caused by sort of like HIPAA compliance, is the fact that not only does the data live in various different platforms, they don't talk to each other. So I would say that if you look at any other industry that is further ahead from a data maturity standpoint, what they've all done was have been able to say, I could understand my journey, my customer or my patient journey from beginning to end. I understand what was that trigger initially that generated X amount of LTV, and I can be able to sort of like see that journey the entire way through. And maybe for better or worse, but most industries have been investing a ton of money into this, right? As a whole.
Right.
We
Right.
haven't seen this in the med spa space at all, right? So I think that's one piece of it. And then the backwards piece of this is like, well, now I understand who my best customers are. Now, if I want to actually go find the best customers based on my highest LTV customer against what my lowest cost of acquisition is, I can't actually, in a HIPAA compliant way, get this data back to any of the ad platforms and actually start to do marketing that is incredibly efficient, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that's the other issue that is a solved problem in most industries. And because of HIPAA compliance, I think that problem hasn't been solved. So those are the two areas where we really focused a lot on is because we already corralled your data, we could really easily see it all the way through. But I think it also forced us to provide this capability in a HIPAA compliant way. So, okay, now we understand our customers, we understand like our operations better. We could not only send this data back to the ad platforms based on high LTV, we also have utilization rate. So we could understand capacity planning and we could use it for all different forecasting that is just not possible when you're looking at things in a silo. And again, I think this is a solved problem in a lot of industries.
Right. No, and that brings up a great point when it comes to really being able to like narrowly focus in on like who your ideal patient avatar is, because you can't be everything to everybody. I mean, and that also goes back to branding, and we're always trying to solve that issue, especially for med spas and these types of practices who are going out there trying to be everything to everybody. At the end of the day, you can start off that way, but you're not going to be successful long term unless you know ideally like who your patients are. And this lets you at another level really hone in on that, which is great. And I love that. The next question that I have is, how can practices use this type of data to improve patient retention and increase lifetime value, which you've touched on, but do you have a specific example that you can share?
Yeah, I would say you don't need to use Corral data to sort of start thinking about this. I think the first and foremost, just starting to understand what is your back of the envelope, understanding what is the lifetime value that based on their first procedure. If you don't have that information, lifetime, like the things that I would really sort of encourage everyone to look at is like, let me understand, let me go to my EMR system. Again, if you have Corral data, it's out of the box. If you don't, you could figure this out. Let me understand lifetime value based on first procedure. Let me understand lifetime value based on the first channel that they use to come to our practice. Let me understand lifetime value based on who their first injector was. Let me understand lifetime value by any of these, like start to understand your cohorts. I would say that that's first and foremost. You want to
Hmm.
drive LTV, lower retention. There is no better way of doing this than having a better understanding of who you are actually serving. Because I think a lot of this is retention is great, but then if you're talking about procedures that are sort of like have lower unit economics, retention might not be what you're going after in that case. That's why we sort of look at LTV as this holy grail over time. And then
Hmm.
using that information now you can just start to actually really move the needle on your business to say, this is what we're promoting in our practice. These are the channels we're promoting this on. I think you can start to get a sense of the low hanging fruit where you can have the biggest gain for possibly not a lot of work, not a lot of investment. Again, yes, we make this very easy. There's nothing that's stopping you from literally looking at your data today from your EMR system and from your analytics platform to be able to answer these questions and then running with that.
Right. No, for sure. And this wasn't part of the questions that I was going to ask, but I think that giving an understanding, because we're talking about, connecting in these platforms. And you and I recently worked with a client to say, like, okay, here are at minimum, the platforms that you should connect to start being able to use Corral to help you visualize that data. So if you're not going to, like you were just saying, like, at the very minimum, do this stuff manually, go into your systems, look at these particular things to help you start getting that understanding. But at the very minimum, you need to connect your practice management system, right? If you're running Google ads, if you're running Meta ads, you need to connect those platforms to get an understanding of the money you're putting towards your marketing and your advertising. How is that contributing to, whether it's are you converting those? What is the lifetime value? What procedures are they initially coming in for? And then correct me if I'm wrong on this, QuickBooks, right? Their fine platform, whatever that is that they're using. And then there's another one, right? There's one more potentially
I
that they
will say we partner a lot with Line for phone calls, but
phone calls, right?
call tracking platforms. And then from a finance side, a lot of our customers do use QuickBooks. A lot of them use Sage. And I think like sort of like don't my advice is don't make perfect, be the enemy of the good, right? Like start somewhere. If you are going to start with just let me connect my EMR system and Google Analytics, right?
Right.
Then
Yes.
let me
And Google Analytics.
yeah. So I think like you just want to like start small. My thinking on this is always is like, yes, like we allow you to make smarter, better decisions, and we might sort of allow you to eliminate a lot of time that you spend on doing this. But at the end of the day, we need to be a profit center for our customers. We want to make sure that we are providing that value. So if you are not using Corral Data, that is absolutely fine. You should be the biggest unlock, the biggest hack is
Mhm.
understand your customers and understand your data. Not every piece of it, but understand enough of it. You can make smart decisions along the way. And we see that practices that use, again, that are data driven are growing 7 times faster than the industry is. That is it's undeniable that using data is a massive unlock even if you don't use us.
Yeah, 100%. And it goes back to my premise again for, having guests like Alex on and really driving home the importance of running these types of practices like a business. So, I mean, and from the beginning. So, if you can, when you're starting off, if you can implement a solution like Corral from the beginning, it makes things so much cleaner too, so that, you're not having to come in, your team isn't having to come in the beginning and, unravel all of the things that have been, all of these systems that have been in use potentially, and really trying to unravel and then connect things. So if you can from the beginning, like in a perfect world, from my perspective, and I work with a lot of practices that are just starting off, and they're asking me all the time, what practice management system should I use? And it's a really hard question for me to answer. So I've used all of them. And at this point, I know which ones make it easier for practices to have that connectivity, right? So, and I'm going to do another episode on the tech stack, but that's where Corral Data comes in to, play with these practices, is really, having that ideal technical solution from the beginning or at some point, so that you can run your practice like a business that, has a future beyond just giving you a job. Having that clean start, again, starting from the beginning, you have your practice management system, right? Ideally, you have a powerful CRM, you have your marketing, you have your Google Analytics, and then you have a tool like Corral that's taking all of that and wrapping it up in a nice little bow so that you can make the business decisions that need to be made, right? So I think with that too, another follow-up question for you, Alex, is the clients that you're working with that are in this space, like how are they measuring success as it relates to Corral? Like how are they saying month to month, because there is, a monthly fee that they're paying Corral obviously to have this technology. How are they measuring success related to using your platform?
That's a great question. I think for most of our customers, what we're also looking at is like what was their like baseline growth and what was their baseline growth after they started using it. And I guess like there's a lot of factors that go into this. A lot of our customers are buying up practices, so like it's almost like some of it is growth related, and some of it is just operationally, right? Like they would not be able to do this without Corral, because as they add new businesses that are all running different EMR systems and stacks, like you just can't integrate them without Corral. But even the ones that are, let's say, adding a very similar stack, like I think for us, it's how are we making their life so easy and
Mhm.
effortless to be able to answer literally any question that they want. That's one thing. And then the second thing is just like growth, right? Like, are we helping them unlock the growth that they need? That we are not a cost center, that they're looking at sort of a monthly fee from Corral, and that is sort of they happily pay it without
Mhm.
sort of thinking twice, because we are not just sort of lowering the amount of time and effort and energy and sort of all the operational ease we're providing. We're also just a revenue driver, whether it's because we're surfacing insights that are relevant for their practice, but
Mhm.
also it's because we are now also leveraging that data and sending it back to the ad platforms, and they're substantially more efficient in the customers that they're targeting as well. So I
Yes.
think our thinking is always, are we a profit center or are we a cost center? If we are a cost center, what do we need to do on our end, and how do we need to engage our customers so we are a profit center, and we're a profit center always.
Yeah, no, that makes absolute sense. And something we haven't really talked about that I'd love for you to touch on a little bit is Ask Corral, because I think that that is a phenomenal feature to be able to just go in and, you have a question related to, the data, the performance, what's going on, how does give an example of how somebody can use Ask Corral.
Yeah, so I think Ask Corral was originally when we were building this, and obviously we started building our platform a little bit before ChatGPT became sort of massive. But I think people are familiar with using ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude to be able to ask any questions they want. We're doing exactly the same thing, but we're doing it in a HIPAA compliant way, in a secure way, and we're doing it based on all of our knowledge of the industry, right? So when somebody is asking a question about injectors, it understands what that means. It understands nuance and context to be able to answer those questions. But it's looking at your data, it's looking at industry averages to be able to give you really good, solid recommendations. So you could ask it questions about what happened in the past. You could ask it questions about what you should do about this. You can get recommendations out of it. And all of this is grounded in this sort of like concept of like nuance and context, right? So, and I think that's really the main thing that we sort of built into this from a modeling perspective is at this point, we've had over 1 million questions asked, answers given. So as our platform has more questions, it has more answers, it learns from all of those previous questions. If somebody presses a thumbs up on it or takes an answer and leverages it in their reporting, this is how our system constantly learns and evolves. And we've really spent a lot of time really training it on the industry. We've been doing this one industry at a time. So I think what we're really excited about is the first part of our platform was we're just going to give you the most amazing, relevant, actionable reporting possible. The second part was maybe we missed something and we didn't give you some widget or some report. Just build whatever you want just by asking for it. And this third piece that we're excited to announce next week, and some of our beta customers already have it, is this concept of instant insights. On any single report, you press one button, literally one click, and you get all the insights of what you should do about it without looking at a report. Just literally a bulleted list of what happened, what you should do right now. And it's
Right.
incredibly actionable. And again, it has nuance and context of the industry, and to really make this, again, go from this is really cool and this is a cost to being, oh, this is a profit driver.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, and something that just popped into my mind, and actually I was thinking about it as I was preparing for this podcast, is back in the old days when I was working at the agency, these companies who are acquiring these med spas, it eliminates the need to have an analyst on staff. Like we would have an analyst on staff to, help bring all of this information together. So that's another thing that this platform solves for is that it's your analyst essentially in your back pocket. You don't need all of these people who are, taking this information and distilling it down for you and creating these reports. And another really cool thing, because I've been working with Alex, is I get these sample reports sent to my email every day. I like it. I mean, I like looking at it, and having worked inside practices, we used to get these types of reports every day sent to our email. And that's something that's not the norm in this industry, is having that type of information. Again, having a system like Corral Data and having that information so easily and readily accessible, and the things that you need to see as an operator or an owner every day, just as a reminder, it's in your email. It gets sent to your inbox. And I think that is also it's a little thing that makes a big difference, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's like those little things, those little like user experience touches.
Yes,
This is what
for
sort of
sure.
separates this sort of like delight. So,
Mhm.
because what we are fighting is people's hesitation of looking at data and being overwhelmed with data. And so we are trying to change your entire sort of like career's worth of perception of data in one platform. So we have to fight really hard to make it as user friendly as possible, so when
Right.
you are looking at data or insights or any level of reports, that it's actually a delightful moment versus an
Mhm.
overwhelming. I do want to mention one point you sort of said about like analysts, and we have plenty of customers that do have analytics teams and analysts on staff. I think, like, yes, for those that do not have analytics teams and analysts on staff, business users can use Corral Data without those. For the teams that do have analysts on staff, the other piece that we're providing those teams is we're providing them with data engineering
Mhm.
that they would just not be able to, that is just not available. So integrating into, I mentioned a few of these EMR platforms and we partner with a lot of them. Integrating into one of these EMR platforms and making it usable for your analytics team just doesn't exist out there as well. So the other piece that we're solving for is, even if you have an analytics team, you definitely do not have a data engineering team in house in the space. It's just we haven't like, and we work with pretty much every single large MedSpa operating group. Some of them have analytics teams. None of them have data engineering teams, and I think it's because the level of specialization that is necessary is pretty intense, and you're also just essentially spending years to build out these integrations. So I
Right.
think that that's the other piece that we are trying to solve for.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. I didn't even think about the engineering aspect of things. And I run into that with, trying to take, again, these practice management systems and integrate them with with CRMs. So I was just dealing with it yesterday, as a matter of fact. So you have to have that, that technological engineering, you know, person, or and that's hard to come by, in a business and in these types of businesses too. So this has been great, and we at the MedSpa Society, and with this podcast, what we're trying to do is bring the type of companies like Corral Data and Alex to the forefront as solutions for businesses in the elective medical space. So, is there anything that you think that we didn't touch on today that you would like to touch on before we wrap it up?
I think this is amazing. Thank you for having me on again. The only thing I would say is just, I assure you that business, whether you're using Corral Data or not, if you're sort of taking the premise of using data as a competitive advantage and working backwards from there, there is a reason that companies like Amazon have made, or Google have made, leveraging data as their competitive advantage. And it
100%.
doesn't require massive investments. It doesn't require massive teams. I think it just requires sort of like a little bit of like a reimagination of how do you leverage your primary KPIs to actually drive your business forward. So I
Yeah,
encourage everyone.
yeah, absolutely. And we've talked a lot today, but with Corral Data, because it is a data visualization platform, there's a lot to see. So I'm going to let Alex let you know how you can connect with him and the team at Corral Data to set up a no obligation demo and actually see the platform in action.
Yeah, so if you go to it's very simple. Go to CorralData.com and book a demo, or book a demo is the easiest way to see the platform. And we are literal. Our goal is just again to make this absolutely effortless for anyone to try it out. And so excited to give you a tour.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciate you coming on the Cash Pay podcast. And hopefully, we get to talk to you again in the future.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Cash Pay podcast. Links to resources mentioned can be found in the description. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. See you in the next episode.